And joining us now is the Atlantic's Ashley Parker, who sat down with the president inside the Oval Office. Ashley, the big line from your interview was the president comparing this term to his first term. He told you, quote, "The first time I had to do things to run the country and survive, and the second time I run the country and the world." Is that the view throughout the White House? Is this a common sentiment when you talk to folks at 1600, Penn?
So yes, the common sentiment more though, even than that, although I think the president, frankly, is correct and people can make their own judgment of whether that is a good or a bad thing. That statement is something of a Rorschach test. Some people like the idea that he's bending the country and the world to his will. Some people don't. But the through line really in everyone we talk to when we put this question to the president is that Donald Trump is having a lot more fun this time than he was having the first time. You know, someone told us the first time he got there and he wanted to blow things up. This time, you know, he's blowing more things up and he's doing it with a twinkle in his eye.
Well, on that note, I mean, he is generally a no regrets kind of guy, but we have seen him temper himself on a couple things. He looks like he might be softening on how he feels about Vladimir Putin. He put a pause on these tariffs after he got reaction from the market and some CEOs. Did you get any sense from President Trump that he wished he'd handled some things differently during his first 100 days, or is he proud of his record so far?
Not that he wished he had handled things differently, but we did put actually both of those questions to him. We asked him, you know, is there anything Russia could possibly do that would make you side with Ukraine, essentially? And his answer was revealing. He said, Ukraine, yes. President Zelensky, no. So it's clear that he just views President Zelensky as sort of a foe he's never going to be able to get behind. But there was sort of this little opening for sympathy, potentially, for the Ukrainians. And we also put the tariffs question to him, not if he regretted what he had done, but there's this theory on Wall Street of a quote unquote Trump put, this idea that there is a red line where things get so bad, whether it's the threat of a recession or the devaluation of the dollar or, you know, big box stores, the shelves being barren and what's on the shelves being incredibly expensive. If there's any red line that would force him to rethink his tariff policy. And what he told us, and Wall Street believes he would, and that's obviously very reassuring to them and reassuring to the markets, what he told us was no. You know, I'm aware of these things, but he told us there's no certain number. That said, we did see him pull back actually when the bond markets went haywire. So what he says and what he may actually do when that tariff pause is up in 90 days are potentially different things.
Yeah, and he said he saw Jamie Dimon speaking on one of the Fox Business channels and that, you know,
Yep.
he wanted to consider his words. I also want to ask you, you know, there polls gauging Trump's approval ratings are basically kind of Trump versus Trump. But the ABC News Washington Post Ipsos poll asks, who do you trust to handle the country's main problem? 37% went for the president, 30% went for congressional Dems, and 30% say they don't trust either one. That last 30%, what does that mean moving forward for the country?
Well, one thing it makes me think of is something Senator Alyssa Slotkin told us for this cover story in The Atlantic, because obviously she won in a state that Trump won. So there's a lot of Trump Slotkin voters. And she said, it was interesting, that segment you played from Shaq of sort of dyed-in-the-wool Trump voters. She was talking to us about what she's hearing from those sorts of voters, the Trump Slotkin voters. And she said, a lot of them said to me, look, I view myself as a stage 4 cancer patient where nothing has worked. Things have gotten worse from my grandfather to my father to me, and things I fear are going to be worse for my children still. And I'm sort of at the end of my rope, and I'm willing to try any sort of experimental treatment, experimental chemo, and Trump is that experimental chemo. And so I think that is a lot of that third group you articulated. They didn't necessarily love him. They just didn't know what else to do. And that's going to be the interesting group to watch when they see, you know, I voted for him as a desperate last-ditch effort. I didn't expect him, for instance, to cut the VA.
Even though chemo can make you sick, I guess it's part of that long-term strategy, short-term pain, long-term strategy, looking for a cure. If you think that that's what ails the government, they're willing to sit through that and hopefully turn things around. I also want to ask you, we've confirmed now that Donald Trump called Amazon CEO Jeff Bezos this morning to personally express his displeasure over a report that the website would put the cost of tariffs online. What does that say to you?
I mean, first, it is just remarkable how much that relationship between President Trump and Jeff Bezos has changed over time. Full disclosure, until recently, until January, I worked at the Washington Post, which Jeff Bezos owns. And, in the first term, Jeff Bezos, and not just him, but a lot of these tech titans, these tech oligarchs, really wanted to keep their distance from Trump. And there was sort of a cosmic shift. Part of it was the assassination attempt. Someone described it to us as a lot of these uber wealthy men, sort of on a visceral gut level. It made Trump feel like their spirit animal. Also, all of the persecutions, there was a way they related. They sort of felt if people could come after Trump, people could come after them. But it means that Jeff Bezos has made very clear by going to the inauguration and practically perching himself on Trump's knee, by going down to Mar-a-Lago to kiss the ring, that he is incredibly open to kind of desperately seeking a positive relationship with the president of the United States. So it's not surprising that Trump would call him and expect Jeff Bezos to quickly bend to his will.
And to pick up the phone. All right. It's an incredible interview. Ashley Parker, thank you so much for making the time.